Welcome to Crossroad Connection. We're speaking out for those left unheard. My name is David Scheringa. I'm the host of your program and the president of Crossroad Bible Institute. And we have an exciting program for you today because it's about a topic you may have never heard of. And that is, have you ever thought about prisons having their own churches or churches being planted in prison? And our special guest today to tell us all about this is Mary Mortensen from Prison Congregations of America, or PCA. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the program because you are executive director of a very unique ministry. Why don't you just give us an overview a little bit about what is PCA, not to be confused with the Presbyterian Church of America, which you probably get asked, but Prison Congregations of America. What is it?
Prison Congregations of America is a unique ministry inside prisons whereby an actual congregation is formed inside the prison. As you know, and as many know, there's all kinds of prison ministry going on, much of it wonderful ministry. But in our model, it's an actual congregation that's in the prison. Obviously, the members are the inmates, and they're usually members simply by participation. They are served by a pastor who is called and trained and accountable to a denomination on the outside, the pastors from the outside, and then they are supported by churches on the outside who, of course, support the ministry financially, but also in most cases take turns coming in as worship guests. So the congregation, in as much as it's allowed to, within the parameters of the facility, operate just like an outside congregation. We currently have 26 worshiping communities in 13 states, but among those are represented 8 denominations.
So 26 churches are in how many states?
13.
13, and it represents 8 different denominations.
Correct.
That gives us a little bit of an idea of the very ecumenical role, and also when we talk later about maybe someone wants to do this, I mean, any church can get involved with this, right?
Absolutely. Any church that sees this model and believes it's something through which they can work, we welcome them. One of the things about the denominational piece is that we like to have denominational oversight and sponsorship so that we're assured that the pastor is indeed trained and accountable, but also so that there's a succession plan. So when the pastor moves on, the ministry doesn't fall apart.
The church is still there.
The church is still there, just like one on the outside. And the call process or appointment process for the new pastor is normally like whatever would be that denomination would do on the outside. And so there's a succession plan kind of built into this as well. But having said that, the ministry is ecumenical. The people who come as members to these congregations are from all faith backgrounds. And so one of the things I love about this ministry is these congregations look like the kingdom. They're very diverse within the parameters, of course, of the facility.
Do the people that are attending it then in the church, say it's a Lutheran church, do they understand it that it is a Lutheran church or not really?
In most cases. For instance, I've worshiped here in this area on Monday night with Celebration Fellowship, and its sponsoring denomination is Christian
Reformed.
Christian Reformed, right. And their pastor clearly says, okay, we're going to approach things from a Christian Reformed standpoint. And so I think the men of Celebration Fellowship understand that that's what that is.
They have that identity.
They have that identity. That does not mean that when they walk out the gate that they will go be Christian Reformed. They might be something else. But I think they understand that they're a piece of that.
People might be asking who are watching, why are you doing this? Don't prisons have chaplains, and don't chaplains have worship services? Why have an actual church established within a prison?
I am asked that a lot, and it's true.
The rationale.
And our position is to have a congregation Well, the best way to say that is to, if that was your question to me, I would say to you, why do you go to church? Why don't instead you have a worshiping community someplace where every week somebody new comes in and then leaves? And why don't we do that? Well, we don't do that. At least I don't do that because I like the fellowship. I like knowing I'm part of something larger. I like someplace where I can learn how to be a citizen, learn how to be one of God's children in a mature and healthy way. And secondly, or thirdly, I can learn how to serve. And anybody who walks into a prison congregation, and I challenge them to do this, to ask one of the members, why is this different? They will say some version of,
These are the inmates
this,
now.
Yep, the inmates. They will say, this is ours.
This is my church.
And then they will look to their pastor and say, he or she is our pastor.
Interesting. And so what you're saying is that, obviously it's wonderful to have chaplains who are holding worship services or bringing guests in.
Absolutely.
But that's not organized to the level to where a church can be most helpful for the fellowship, for the spiritual growth of the members, and for the members to take ownership of. So that's sort of an amorphous, gathering. But now they say, this is my church.
Right.
And they have Bible studies, and here's my pastor. And it would seem to me that would do something good for them when they get out, rather than having been feeling disconnected from the church. Church life is part of their routine. Does that happen?
Yes. And I would also argue that members of prison congregations walk out of prison with some pretty good skill sets. They've learned through their congregation hospitality. They've learned leadership, again, within the parameters of the facility in which they live. And they've learned problem solving. I don't know about you, but I've learned an awful lot about problem solving being a member of a congregation, and so have they.
They're filled with problems.
Yes, exactly. And to be able to struggle and work through something and come out on the other side still loving each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. And the other important thing about this is the other piece of the PCA ministry model is these people from the outside that come in as worship guests, not to do worship, but as guests.
Yeah, let's emphasize that a minute. You have neighboring churches who support the pastor and that church, who will come and attend it and just to help support it. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Just like my board and I got to do Monday night. We came in as guests. We had no role in the service other than to be guests, and we were welcomed. It was a wonderful experience. But here's what happens. You have citizens from the outside come in as worship guests. They cannot not realize that these men or women with whom they have now worshiped in the prison, most of whom are going to walk out someday, and start to think, what's going to happen to these people? Who will support them? And then we just waltz very easily into reentry. And while my organization doesn't do reentry, we set these people up with trainings that have already been set up by various groups around the area or the nation, and they form a net. So when the inmate walks out of prison, there is somebody to meet them. Or at
would that be connected with the people that were worshiping there?
Yes, it can be started by them. Now, some states won't allow the people who worship inside to also
Right.
be the ones who meet the returning citizens at the gate.
Right.
But you're part of a big congregation on the outside.
There's more people out there.
There's more people out there who maybe don't want to go in but want to do this other sort of work. Sometimes it's very informal, and the person will get out of prison and will think, now, let me think. This church came to visit. I'm going to go there because they told me I should. And if they walk in that door of that church, and this is what I challenge churches when I talk to them, you better hope that when that person walks in your door, you understand that walking in is Jesus, and he or she had best be welcomed, because
Right.
could be what makes or breaks their time on the outside. I find that very exciting.
Well, after the break, we want to talk more about that,
Okay.
and sensitizing the church to helping people in prison. I think we're interested in how you got involved with this, and I also think there's still that lingering question of do the chaplains find this to be competitive and a problem? And so we're going to keep up this wonderful conversation. We'll be right back after this.
At Crossroad Bible Institute, we are committed to helping people in prison develop relationships with Jesus Christ. By correcting Bible study lessons and writing letters of encouragement, CBI instructors participate in this ministry in a safe and secure way. For more information or to sign up to become a CBI instructor, please visit us at cbi.fm on the web.
Welcome back to Crossroad Connection. My name is David Schuringa. I'm in the studio here today with Mary Mortensen, who is the Executive Director of Prison Congregations in America, or of America.
Of America.
Is it of America?
Of
Prison
America.
Congregations of America. And we've been learning a lot in a short period of time about planting churches in prisons. And we can see the value of that, so that they have a congregation they can identify with, a congregation that can organize their faith and so forth, and their relationships and their Bible studies. But what do the chaplains think? Do they see this as competition or pushing them out of a job?
Sometimes.
Oh.
My job as director is to do the negotiations among the various people that make a prison congregation happen. So that's the denomination, certainly, the prison, wherever we want to do this, sometimes the Department of Correction, and then to be sure there's those local churches that will support that. So my job is really to manage those negotiations. Sometimes a chaplain in a prison will be the objector to this.
A little bit turf conscious.
A little bit, and also, and this is valid. It's a valid thought process, but not when they understand what we're really about. There's the thought that, well, this comes in, and we have this volunteer pastor who's going to come in, and the church is paying the pastor and not the state, so maybe they won't need me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The answer to that is the pastor is not taking over the chaplain's job, but rather is just taking a tiny little slice of that pie. Everything that the chaplain does still needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, prisons where we do this successfully, in many cases, the chaplain is our biggest champion.
Sure, I would think so.
Absolutely.
I've heard that. Well, first of all, I've heard, I understand that, because of cost cutting, there are fewer chaplains. So you can have one chaplain for 1,500 guys, plus they are responsible for facilitating all of the worship, right?
Exactly.
I mean, Jewish, Muslim, American Indian. So they have an administrative nightmare.
They do.
If there's a chaplain at all. And then there's many places that don't have chaplains, or they're volunteer chaplains. So this is actually, providing a good service, and the chaplain can have a wonderful partner in that pastor.
That's exactly right, and that's normally what happens after we have come in and there's a congregation. If there's a chaplain of the prison, in many cases it's a religious activities coordinator or an actually administrative title instead of the chaplain. Again, once we build that trust, and that's our job, that's anybody's job when you do prison ministry, but that we certainly take that seriously, that as the pastor is coming in and building his or her congregation, that they are not only building trust with their congregation, but also with the staff. And so it's this special walk, of building trust with both these entities, and when it happens, it's quite lovely.
Well, this strikes me in an interesting parallel. Maybe I don't know if you've ever used this language with the chaplains of the institution, but sometimes we'll have jail chaplains who are volunteers and a little bit turf conscious,
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll say, "Oh well, we don't need Crossroads material," and we said we tell them, this is not to replace anything you're doing, but to supplement what you're doing. And then they see that altogether differently. We're not trying to replace their program. We're not trying to say that ours is better than theirs, but this will supplement it in a way that will be meaningful for the. And I think that sounds what your church is doing and your pastors are doing. They're not stepping on the toes of the chaplain. They're not replacing the chaplain. They're actually supplementing the chaplain.
Exactly. And the language that we use when we're doing these negotiations is to say exactly what you said, that we're not here to replace anything or anybody, but rather to stand shoulder to shoulder with the other prison ministries, with the chaplain or the cultural activities coordinator or whatever that person is called, and to hopefully make their job easier.
Switching gears a little bit, I can say, and as you know, I've been in a number of these churches and have had the privilege of preaching in them. Let's see, I've been in the one in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the Christian Reformed Church there. Cornerstone. I have visited the Lutheran church there that meets the night before.
St. Dismas.
And then I've been in the one in Bellamy Creek in Ionia. So I've preached in all three of these, those, and have been very, very impressed with these churches and what's going on. You know, it's a beautiful thing. And the reason I'm also bringing this up is that Rick Admiral from Newton and also Steve Mormon in Sioux Falls, they got their original desire for prison ministry from being Crossroad instructors.
Yes, they did.
And,
yes, they did.
You know, and their love for prisoners and prisons just kind of kept growing, and they started visiting. They said, "I want to be a pastor in one of these." So we feel good about that because we find that Crossroad frequently is an entree point for prison ministry for people. And in fact, I've even known that in South Dakota and in Newton, a lot of those outside folks that come in to the worship service are Crossroad instructors.
Indeed.
Because they are already sensitized to prison ministry. So that's just kind of neat to see how that works together.
It is, and that's a good example of why our various ministries, although Crossroad and Prison Congregations of America would never be necessarily in competition, but that's a good example of how together all these ministries can create this environment that is healthy, that is renewing for people who are incarcerated. I'm proud to be part of that family.
How did you get part of the family?
I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay.
And the Lutheran congregation in the prison, Sioux Falls is where our state penitentiary is, and the Lutheran congregation there has been there for about 25 years. And my church was one of those visiting churches.
And was that original PCA?
Yes.
Okay.
It was.
Okay, because PCA is celebrating its 30th anniversary.
30th anniversary.
So this Lutheran one, 25 years ago, one of the early ones.
Yes, it was one of the early ones. It'll be 25 next year, I think. But our church would go and visit. And so I was used to knowing a prison congregation.
So just your church's involvement in prison ministry what became, and that's a good point for churches to know.
It is.
You know,
it is.
You bring in people who ordinarily would not have thought about it. And
That
so
is
you
exactly
were one of
right.
them.
That is exactly right. And that's a good point, because many times the people, when a congregation is organized and these outside people start coming in, it is not people who have had experience with prison ministry at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're complete newbies.
Yeah.
And in most cases, after they've been in the first time and walk out again, the first question is, when can I come back?
It's almost like a born-again experience.
It is.
I think everybody remembers the first time they were in a prison.
I agree.
You know, so
I agree.
it's that kind of a striking thing.
Yeah.
And so you got involved with that prison church. So your first contact with prison ministry was with Prison Congregations of America.
Exactly. I didn't know it at the time that St. Dismas was formed in any particular model. And then a few years later, my husband and I got involved in ministry to the trustee unit in South Dakota. And then ultimately, I happened across Prison Congregations of America, and I was hired to do some development work for them.
Oh, this is before you were executive director.
So I worked for PCA for about 4 years under contract. Then my predecessor, who is our founder, Pastor Ed Nesselhoff, retired, and I put in for the job, and I was blessed to get it.
It's about 6 years ago, you became
yes.
executive director. Well, after the break, we want to tell people how they can get involved with Prison Congregations of America. So we'll be right back after this.
Crossroad Bible Institute is a nonprofit organization that relies on financial donations from faithful supporters. These donations ensure that we will be able to continue offering services to people in prison to bring them the truth of God's Word. To make a tax-deductible donation or to find out more ways to help, please visit us at cbi.fm on the web.
Welcome back to Crossroad Connection, talking to Mary Mortensen here, who is the executive director for the last 6 years of Prison Congregations of America. And as I alluded to before, Prison Congregations of America, like Crossroad Bible Institute, is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. So it's been around for a long time. It's established a great model for ministry. And, people have been hearing about this, and I'd like to talk a little bit about how they can get involved. I guess one way to get involved, of course, do you have a newsletter that they can get?
We do. We have a newsletter. We also have a website.
What is that website?
And the
so we can show it
website
to
is
them?
just www.prisoncongregations.org. From our website, you'll be able to get a more detailed explanation than I've given you today about the ministry. You'll also get to see all of the congregations. There's a video about Prison Congregations of America, as well as links to several of the current congregations. Most importantly, though, from my perspective, because our goal, of course, is to have at least one of these congregations in every state.
Okay.
And we're
that's
very
a big
proud
goal.
that we have 13 states, but that means we have a ways to go.
Sure.
And so our contact information is on there. I'm the point of contact. My email address is on there, as well as my phone number, because if you are a church, and as a church you're talking
about a local congregation.
A local congregation, and you'd like to get involved in prison ministry, and there's a prison in your area, maybe we can start that conversation. If you're a denominational leader and are wondering ways that you can renew your church, I'll guarantee you this is one way you can do it. Get a hold of me. And if you're an administrator and want some other kind of programming that can partner with what you're doing now, get a hold of me. In all cases, in these congregations start with any one of those three contacts.
Yes, well, that's very helpful to know, and that's very concrete. So you could have an individual who's in a church, and they happen to know, within an hour or something like that of them is this large prison, and so they could, if they have sort of a church planting spirit,
Exactly.
their church can contact your organization and start talking about, is there a need for a church to be planted there? Is there one there already, and can we do that? Right. I like that you're reaching out to denominational leaders, because my own denomination, our home missions, and stuff like that, has been very supportive.
Yes, you have.
Of that, and this becomes an exciting way to expand the denomination and to get involved there. And what was that third way?
For administrators.
For administrators
if they
and
wanted
so forth.
Get in touch with me. A couple of our congregations have actually been started at the request of either the Department of Correction or the chaplain.
Okay, so this can start from within the church as well.
Right.
Is there a way for people to donate?
Oh, yes.
Can they donate online, or
You
need to
can
send a
donate
check
online
in? Can they get on a mailing list so that they're getting a monthly mailing or something like that, asking for the donations? And
you can do that by either calling me, of course, or emailing me. Again, on the website, there's a way that you can sign up to be on our mailing list.
Okay.
And we operate solely on donations, so of course
Sure.
donations are always welcome.
You're not being supplemented by the prisons or
we're not.
the departments of correction.
No, and when you donate to PCA, what essentially you're doing is you're investing in the next prison congregation,
Right.
wherever that might be. And
People should realize that, very different than other congregations, and that is the members of these churches, their tithe maybe $5 a month.
Exactly.
Because they're making 10 cents or 50 cents an hour at the most. And so these, you're basically helping a church for the poorest of the poor. And so that's why they need your help. They need your support.
Right. And the local congregations, of course, do. And the pastors of these prison congregations really have a twofold job. One is to take care of their inside congregation and all that entails.
Yeah.
But the other one, in most cases, is being out in other pulpits on Sunday mornings. These prison congregations normally meet days other than Sunday. So these pastors then are outside in pulpits on Sunday mornings, raising awareness and, of course, funds for the ministry.
And just for our viewers' sake, why these churches usually don't meet on Sundays. What my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that to be bringing in people from the outside and having a great big event, the prisons usually don't have the staff available to manage that. And if the chaplain does happen to have something going on, he's going to be doing it on a Sunday morning. So that's why they usually meet another time. But it's a good thing for your pastors, because that frees them up to go to the church on the outside and spread the good word, huh?
Right. And it's also good for the visitors, because then when they're coming in on a Thursday night or a Monday night, that's not interfering with their own responsibilities
in their own
church,
own
congregation.
So, excellent.
Plus, they can go to church the next Sunday and they'll be all excited about what happened at their prison congregation.
They'll be talking about it. There's a connection in church history I have found, very close connection between visiting prisoners and revival.
Yes.
Visiting prisoners seems to spark revival in the church, and revival always seems to spark prison ministry. And so this is a great way. One last question before we close up, because our time has quickly escaped us. Do you have a training for people or of some sort before they, when they start getting involved with this, or they just kind of have to wing it?
We have a training. We have an annual conference that's called Come and See. Again, that's detailed on our website, but this year it'll be September 18th and 19th in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And it is a 2-day conference where we really train this model. And it isn't just me they listen to. This
is for volunteers.
Yep, or people who might want to have a prison congregation.
Okay.
And so they hear from me, they hear from prison administrators, they hear from ex-offenders, they hear from all kinds of voices. But then the important thing is they get to worship with the prison congregation as part of that experience. However, once a congregation is starting to be established in some community, I go there and help train the volunteers, and so you're never left alone. We will take care of you until that first service and beyond.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for being with us. This has been exciting. I'm sure I learned a lot, and I'm sure that our viewers learned a lot about church planting in prison. A novel idea, a great idea, a succeeding idea that many are being blessed. So thank you for being with us. Congratulations on your 30th anniversary. And I hope that you'll get into every state as your goal is. Got to do that before you retire, right?
Yeah, so we got to work fast. But congratulations.
No, you're a young lady. You got many good years left.
Congratulations on your 30th. Thank you so much for your hospitality. I loved being able to spend time today.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for being with us for this week's program. And we hope to see you again right here next week.